Hello, hello, hello. So this is going to be an amazing little talk. John Gray, yeah, that's his name. John Gray. He wrote "Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus." I know a psychologist who's a colleague of his, and really, John Gray is a great researcher. He's done some other books. That's really his primary thing. And he came to South Africa. It's always good to hear from a guy who's written many books, done a lot of research, and he's interviewed. And so they asked him, "What do men want?" So he said, men want their wives to be happy. I remember certainly when I was married, that's what I wanted. I wanted my wife to be happy. And what do women want? Women want that their husband should make them happy. But he didn't explain two things. And this is very important. If you understand this, you can literally ace this whole men-woman thing. Why do men want their women to be happy? And why do women need? That's the important critical question. Why do they need their men to be happy? Why are men happy already? And why are women unhappy and they need their men to be happy? They need someone else to make them happy. And the answer is quite simple. Because if you look at the structure of the mind, this is really a Kabbalistic idea. There are three parts in our head. We have the right, the left, and the prefrontal. This is amazing because modern science and Kabbalah spoke about it hundreds of years ago. So the right mind is called Chachma, or we would call it gray matter. That's the ability to be innovative. Think about most inventions. I can't even think of a single, and it's not to disparage women. Women have qualities that men don't have, but I can't think of a single invention that women invented. Men are much better at innovation. The flip side is women have more white matter. They're much better at basically analyzation. Women can hear up to like 5 tones, literally more tones of voice. They can tell if people are more distressed or angry, where men are not able to do that. Additionally, and most men won't believe me, even though I saw it in a study and I've confirmed it, and that is that women can think of 3 things at the same time. Men cannot. We can, well, unless you're Superman, you can only think of one thing at a time. So the sum total of a brain, and they have about 10 times more white matter, and white matter is kind of the matter of analyzation, of seeing the interconnectivity. As one rabbi, very bright man, describes, he says, men are waffles. Everything's square. Okay, this is this, this is that. So you have an ability to focus. Women are spaghetti. Everything's like interconnected. And what that actually does is that when you see more of reality, let's say you analyze more. Here's a really good example. I have a friend who's a very bright guy. He was on a plane once. The guy next to him says, "Wow, you really seem nervous." So he says, "Yeah, you know what could go wrong?" And he's like, this engine part, that one. And the guy's like, "Just don't talk." In other words, you and I get onto a plane, we're not afraid. Why? Because we don't know anything that can go wrong. The pilot might be concerned. He may know 1,000 things that can go wrong. So in other words, you see the pilots, they're pretty focused. So women are much more focused, but that focus is really a result of anxiety. And men are less focused, but that focus is really not necessarily because they have things under control, is they don't know that there's something that they need to have under control. Another example of this is that, and again, I'm not trying to disparage men or women. It's just that we have different brain structures and different purposes in this world. Men are better at kind of conquering, and women are better at homemaking, and they need different skill sets. So basically, when it comes to investing, men are more risk takers, women are more conservative, and that goes based on how their brains operate and the information they receive. So now we understand 2 very, very interesting things. First of all, we understand why women are attracted to men. Women want that joy, right? Everybody wants to be happy. That's a primary thing that everybody wants. There's more to it, but I'm just going to use that for now. Why are men attracted to women? Well, obviously, for a man, it's special, whatever. It's comforting, whatever it is. If you want to go more mystical, the Rebbe says that we're actually 2 halves of one soul, so we feel that we're missing our other half, so there's kind of a spiritual desire to connect. Now, this is super interesting. So, if you ask the question, so why do women need men to make them happy? It's very simple. Because if you're unhappy perpetually, because your brain sees more problems, what are you going to want? Well, you're going to want someone to protect you. But really, and here's the interesting thing, because men are good at taking that role, at least they used to be. They understood that that was their role, and it's a natural desire of a man to take that role as a protector. However, what they don't understand is that the real subconscious desire is for happiness. It's not only for safety, it's for happiness. And so that's why men have a duty, whether it's intimacy, just simply making your wife happy. In fact, it's quite amazing to me. I don't know if you know this, there's 613 actual laws from the Torah, from the Bible, God-given laws. Obviously, they're given to the Jewish people, but they're wise for all people. And one of the laws is make your wife happy the first year after marriage. Be focused for 1 year making her happy. Because if a person did that, what happens is, and this is also, there's another great researcher, John Gottman, fascinating stuff. So he writes that 80% of divorces, that's a large percentage of divorces. Now, 80% of divorces happen to be initiated by women. And the cause of 80% of divorces is, he gives an example of Aaron and Linda. So Linda is unhappy. Listen to this very carefully. It's very important. Linda is unhappy. And therefore, she begins to find faults in Aaron. And this is a Kabbalistic principle. It's called Hamtokas Hadinim. In other words, why are people jealous of the other person? You can have two people, and there are times even in a relationship that somebody that will be mean to the person they love, sometimes even to their children. Why? Because they're actually miserable. And so when we're miserable, we become jealous of the people that are happy, because we're always jealous. So when we're jealous, we feel it's unfair that you have something that I don't have. Now, I can't say to myself consciously that I'm actually just a miserable bastard. So what I do is I find, now we all have good and evil in us, but when we're jealous, we find the evil in the other person, we highlight the evil, and then we become a vigilante. It's my job to get rid of their evil. But really what we're doing is we're criticizing them, we're shaming them, we're putting them down. So that's why there's bullies and anti-Semitism, anti-West. So what we're really trying to do is we're trying to make them miserable, make them have low self-esteem, make them fear, make them hate themselves. So that's what it really is. And this is an absolute fact. This is not something that people can really control. You can't control the subconscious mechanism. You can only control the conscious mechanism. Basically, it's a fundamental obligation of every single person to be happy. The most important obligation you have in life is be happy, which you can do by finding the good. One of the things I teach people is in the morning when you wake up, you have to count your blessings, at least 10 blessings, and that will make you happy. The first thought of the day becomes a train of thought. So this is a really critical thing, because if a husband brings joy to his wife, and in a relationship there's another dynamic that goes on. The other dynamic is whenever you have a kind of giver-receiver, this is something that men can understand. Let's say you have a boss, or let's say you were a child, you had a teacher, you were a child, you had a parent. So the receiver always kind of recedes some of their personality to allow the personality of the giver. So what often happens in a relationship is that when a man starts to date a woman, there's some kind of excitement, and he's kind of giving that energy, and she's feeling that energy, and it's all quite beautiful. But then they get comfortable with each other, and so he doesn't feel like he has to give her energy, so he can just go off to work and do his thing, and she's somehow going to be happy. But it doesn't work like that, because basically you have to just imagine this. Women are an energy, let's call it vacuum. They need energy. And in fact, the example that's given is like the sun and the moon. The moon doesn't have any energy of its own. The moon has zero light of its own. Now, everybody wants to be alive and happy, but she needs the light of the sun, so she's going closer to the sun. She's cycling. Now, it's critical for men to understand this, and particularly if you want to basically not get divorced. Why? Because when a person is miserable, then they become jealous. Then they see what's wrong with you, and that becomes a narrative. They create a narrative in their mind. The psychologist said that by the time basically men and women come to him for marriage counseling, it's too late, because the woman has already disassociated. In fact, in divorce, they show this, that men get very shocked and they get traumatized by divorce. Women do not. because they've built up this narrative in the head. The guy's a schmo, he's a this, I should have never married him, he's a lazy bum, blah, 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 blah. So they've built up this narrative. It's taken them 2 years to disassociate. And then they come and they say, we want a divorce. Oh, let's get it. By the time they get into that counseling chair, they've already divorced that guy. And so the easiest way to understand your role in a marriage, and this is critical, and in fact, the Rebbe says this, the great master, the Lubavitch Rebbe, says a man's role, a husband, father's role, is to make his wife and kids happy. And so just understand that's your role. Make your wife and kids happy. And if you do that, you will be happy.